We have not received data from the web filter other than what's 4 weeks back. We instituted a web-based student bring in their own device process and did not collect the data, whether you give it to me or not, for that entire period. My understanding is that that filter could give us detailed information about the usage of those devices that would be important to the evaluation of the BYOD program, not only in a negative, but in a positive. And for someone to say that it can be twisted, maybe it can, but I'm going back to the question of why aren't we keeping it? Why aren't we looking at it? Why aren't we creating reports that help us or the administration evaluate the BYOD program? To me, it's irresponsible to start that program without all the tools in place that we have here already that only need to be flipped on.
I can't see how more information can be bad.
Please.
Just so we're clear, Matt, so that there's not a misunderstanding. The filter that we're talking about is the Barracuda filter. That's the URL filter.
Yes.
And the URL filter, is it true that the URL filter is capable of doing a lot of things?
Absolutely. Out of the box, you can do all kinds of things.
Okay. Is it also true that the architecture of the network has a bearing on what Barracuda can do?
Absolutely. It all depends on how the network is set up.
And is it true that our network architecture is set up in such a way that all SSIDs go through Barracuda in one stream?
That's correct.
And is it true that, given the architecture of the network, that you can't separate what is logged on the guest network versus what is logged on the business network, that you're logging everything, all traffic?
That's correct.
Okay, so one of the issues that we have, and I may not have been clear about this in the past, is there is no way, given the network architecture, to separate this was URLs visited on guest network, this is URLs that was visited on business network. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay, is it also true that guest network traffic, even if our network had a different architecture, which it doesn't, is it also true that the guest network would not separate out BYOD devices from something that I just did right here?
That's correct. Or somebody that has a device out in the audience.
And that would be logged in the guest network, had nothing to do with BYOD.
In an attempt to go to a website, it's blocked, it's recorded on the filter.
Is it true that I could sit out in the parking lot and do that, and it would be logged on, it would go through our filter?
If you could get a signal from...
Yeah, I can.
Yes. So,
essentially, regardless of what the Bearcat 310 or Barracuda 310, Bearcat is a schema, can do, what it can do is a function of the network architecture.
Yes.
Could the the Barracuda filter, given given a different architecture, pinpoint the exact device that URL was visited from?
Yes.
Is it true that if you were going to do that, that you would literally have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of addresses? It would be possible for the Barracuda 310 to identify that device right there under a different architecture.
Yes.
But our architecture is such that when I log on with my iPad, I am assigned a dynamic address as opposed to a static address.
Right.
And that dynamic address will be a different address every time I sign in, depending on what addresses are available at the time. I get assigned it randomly.
We have a pool of IP addresses,
Yeah.
and
So-
you have a release time, and you receive a new
So
address.
the issue I'm trying to make is really twofold, so there's no misunderstanding. The guest network cannot be separated from the business network, given our architecture. A different network architecture, a different network design, and perhaps it could be. It's not a function of the software, it's a function of the network architecture. And
That was your question. Are you satisfied with that answer? Because I haven't got a clue what was said yet. And I'm proud to say that. All right.
So what you're telling me is, if somebody pulls up in the parking lot, they get on our system, send a message that makes it through the Barracuda, we cannot figure out who that was.
correct.
Because if somebody pulled up in the parking lot, sent a message from our network, got through the Barracuda, say they emailed the police department, or went on and logged into a website that they were allowed to and said something. Something that would raise a red flag by the content of the message. I'm not going to get into threats or anything like that. What you're saying is, if we have no way to try to decipher whether that came from a staff member, guest network, or somebody in the parking lot.
Essentially, they're filtered just like anybody else's content.
No, but what I'm asking you is, if something got through, do we have a way to backtrack to find out who did it? And what you're saying is we don't. And my other question is, does this the wireless controller, does that monitor web traffic?
It's not a web content filter, no. It sets policies.
So it doesn't report traffic,
It does not report traffic. It's not designed to report traffic. So,
but we can't trace it back?
technically, it's filtered just like anything else, so no, we wouldn't.
Okay. Because if there was a threat that was sent out of the school district, and there was a reason to want to backtrack that, you're saying that we can't do that. We wouldn't know if it was a staff member or a child or anything else. So that concerns me.
Now, if you're asking about if I can say, no, this device can't get on, there's absolutely ways that you could set that up on the network and block that particular device. Yes, you can do that. Do we do that? No. But if I wanted to, yes, I could.
Their device had to be recognized, or they had to do a login. It's my understanding that we could then follow their traffic, because that login would be linked with that traffic, and we would know that that person was a BYOD person. And something as simple as either providing logins, like we do to our kids in the regular system, or the network having to identify them, could have allowed us to track the entire BYOD program throughout the time. Having the CSV file, whether you want to give the CSV file out or not, that should be backed up and recorded to the server, because you can do that in an automatic process. That file can be saved to the server without any big process. Isn't that true, Matt?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Can't you back that CSV file up every week to the server automatically?
Can I back the CSV file up? CSV is an output function of the Barracuda. So I don't back up any type of, we have a log file?
Okay, I'll re-ask the question.
Yes, that'd
Can
be
you
helpful. 'cause I'm-
output the CSV file to be stored on the server for future use on a weekly basis?
Sure,
Yeah.
we already do that. There's a CSV file log that sits on the device, on the Barracuda. However, that's going to include network traffic. It includes everything. So we're talking thousands and thousands of URLs.
My understanding is that the CSV file that sits on the Barracuda only lasts for 4 weeks, and then it's rewritten. That they have a function where you can export it on a regular basis to a server or a backup device to save.
Oh yes, there's all kinds of abilities
But we
to
don't do that.
for backing up.
We don't do that, right?
There's no need for us to back it up to an external server right now.
I know, but Matt,
So no, I don't.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get at. If you could answer my question whether you do or not. So we don't. So my question is this. My question is this. What is the harm? Question is this. What is the harm in backing that CSV file up to the server on a weekly basis in case you want to go back and look at the network traffic or the URLs? Is it expensive? Is it difficult to do? Why aren't we doing it?
Because it's not necessary.
So we have no way to look back at our web traffic. We have no way to separate out BYOD traffic and see how much of that's going on. We have no way to separate out somebody from the parking lot from somebody in the office as far as going back and historically looking at the record.
Okay, at this point,
I'm going to have to make a decision on BYOD. I'm on the school board. I'm going to have to vote on that. So I would like to see some data. And I would like to see some data based on, okay, out of our bandwidth here, we're using this much for the school. We know that. Here is how much traffic, how much internet access we are seeing to try to get an idea of what is going on in this pilot program. You know, we're trying to test here. So, but by just looking at the entire network, we don't know. But I'm trying to look at groups bandwidth, the staff versus the guest network.
Not sure exactly how you would do that, but I'm sure there's a way we could look into that.
But we don't readily have it available, is what you're saying.
If I run trend reports, no, I'm not running those on teachers versus students versus, you know, custodians versus groups, no.
And Phil was describing it in the meeting,
Okay.
that we cannot separate the staff network from the guest network.
On our filter,
On the filter, yeah, on the Barracuda 310.
which was the question.
But we can somewhere else and look at it as data.
You've got a layer before that. We have a firewall, which is our wireless controller, and we apply policies to the two separate wireless networks. So we know the traffic that's hitting that wireless and the traffic that's hitting that guest wireless. So there's two different points of entry right there if they're on a wireless device. And there's certainly some data I'm sure you could.
Well, because I have some questions, and there's been some misconceptions. And we had one at a school board meeting just a couple of weeks ago, where one of the school board members said, well, when somebody with BYOD says yes, we know who they are. We know they're on the network, and we know who they are. And since then, I've asked a couple other parents, and they seem to think the same thing. And it's not. That's my understanding. We don't know who they are. So at the very least, I think we have a problem that maybe parents are under a false assumption that by clicking that agreement, something more is happening than is really happening. So what I wanted to do was just kind of go through and see what is really happening and what it might take to make more happen and kind of get a feel for that. Particularly before we get ready to talk about BYOD, and obviously that would be a huge increase on the network.
Mm-hmm.
And say Phil got a call, and say it's a police department or some other website, and say, you know, at 4:29 we received a message, and from the content of that message, it sounds like a hooked student. At 4:29, can you tell us, did you guys access our website? Now, from what I understand with the Barracuda, we could tell that, right? We could go into Barracuda and look up 429 and see that traffic went to that website, correct?
Yes.
So if we were alerted to something like that, my question was, then could we go back from there and figure out that it was the person in the parking lot or someone else that had done that, knowing what we were looking for, knowing that we were looking for something that happened
You want
in
to
that
identify the
stream.
device, is what you're asking, aren't you?
I'm asking, can
At
we
429,
identify?
can we identify the device that did that?
Right.
And this is where I think there's a certain time period where, you know, because of the way our network is set up, we don't have static IP addresses, so we don't use the same IP address for every device that comes on. So given a certain time frame of us, you know, being alerted to that, we would be able to However, if it's outside of that, once that IP address was renewed, which is typically, depending on how it's set up on the server, you can set it 24 hour, you can set 2 days, whatever. Outside of that, it's possible that that person could receive a new IP address.
At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, in the parking lot, data is generated from that phone and is stored somewhere. And you're saying that later, probably before the IP refreshes, that you can go back and try to figure out that that's what happened.
Okay, and that can answer the question. Here's what I need to avoid, is the question keeps changing depending on the answer. The question was, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and somebody does something naughty. Have we collected the data on that? No. Could we find out what device did that? Yes.
And you're going to find out that by looking at data. You're not going to, I mean, for security cameras, that's what I'm trying to get at. Do we have the capability to go back and look at the data and figure out what happened?
Let's not mince the word data. If you're asking the question, would we have the ability to go back and identify that device, the answer is either yes or no. I don't know what it is.
Well, let's move on.
So if someone could come on here and log on, look, can a stranger without a student account or a faculty account come into the parking lot and get online in our schools?
So somebody can drive up, our signal,
So it's close enough. To
our
say-
signal extends a little bit outside, and they would be able to get on to,
Well, and part of that's my
It's like-
fault. Part of that's my fault. And I said that night. And that seems to have become a focus.
No, I'm just wondering,
You
can they
sitting,
get online?
sitting in the
I don't have an
parking lot,
iPhone.
you'd have to
Yeah.
be right over here
But say you
by
were,
one of the
but you could get on
handicap-
without a password,
Well,
though, right?
And I don't want to tell people how to do it either, but
No.
it's, you could not be sitting down here in the parking
Right.
lot doing your internet stuff. If the signal goes to the corridor, it goes beyond that. You could be out on the playground, well, excuse me, you could be standing out beside the door and you're gonna get
And I can get on without a password, that's what I'm saying.
the guest center will.
Yeah. Okay.
See, the problem you have is, I could go over to one of these right now and do something sinister. And if Matt weren't here, if like the three of us were here and we're going hee 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 hee, no one would know whether it was Phil or Dave or Mike.
But if you went over to that device,
But
you'd
we
have
would
to
know it was
log
that-
in.
We would know it was
yeah,
that
you
device.
can log in locally to that machine using a student account.
Right.
You could go on and just use it sort of as a, go on and pop on the website real quick, and if it was something that wasn't blocked by the filter, go somewhere, post, absolutely.
Right, but he would need to know a legitimate student name, and so Phil.
No, I mean, we have generic local accounts on the computers in here.
So we don't even log in kids to.
Yeah, they usually log in as themselves if they want access to all their resources. However, they can log on locally to machines as well.
And if their guest network is that the same thing, you don't really,
Yeah,
I could put something on the hard drive of that computer. So is that virus safe?
is what virus say.
That people can get on, we don't know who they are, and then, I mean, this is my
They're Macs.
concern.
They're Macs, so they're virus safe.
Well, that's not really true.
yeah.
There it is.
No, so my biggest concern is this. I look at BYOD as a privilege that we're allowing children to have here. And it's, to my understanding, we cannot individually, easily take that away. We cannot say certain student has abused his privilege and we are going to disallow his internet service.
Well, on the devices go.
Right,
We have done that.
but physically. They don't, we
Physically
can't,
take
we
it away.
cannot block, we
That
cannot
kid-
shut his off.
Oh, I don't know. If you know the name of the device, whether that's possible or not.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is not on, can we easily do it on a routine basis so that if someone's abused their privileges, can we turn it off?
What do you mean, turn it off?
not allow that device to go onto the internet or the network.
That's the question.
Yeah.
So if we take and physically, and the kids are sneaking into school, it's pulling it,
Right.
can we block that device? That's the question.
No.
No.
That's one of the concerns that I have.
We've had our topology maps already posted on a public site.
Which has resulted in,
Which
the
is a
day it went
major
out,
issue.
some intrusions into our network that we caught.
The day after that went out, that our topology maps, which is, fortunately, I took the internal addresses off of those before I sent them over. Had I left those on, that's a road map for somebody. So now that those are out there, the day after those are out there, I'm getting reports from the filter on intrusions on the network. So we already have that as a major issue. And I can't believe those are posted. Somebody mentioned it to me and I said, you gotta be kidding me. We posted online our infrastructure
Were
maps.
those marked confidential?
I was asked to generate and provide information to the school.
Those to my knowledge,
So-
here's the first thing I would say.
That's
Is,
it.
as a school board member, if you're going to produce something that's confidential, particularly the technical nature, you've got to tell me. That looked to me like a flow chart of, because I was interested in whether we had a Barracuda at each school and so forth. I never asked for confidential information, and it's not marked confidential. And frankly, from a technical standpoint, I'm not savvy enough to look at that and know that somebody can get into your network or not. So the fact that I posted it, that was public information. Unless somebody that's in the know is going to say otherwise, that looked like a flow chart to me, a tree.
So I'm gonna say otherwise, that should be confidential.
Well, I guess I would ask you why you released it.
I was asked to by a school board member.
No, I
No, you
told
weren't.
you to.
Yeah.
Then I guess it's Phil.
Yep, it's my fault.
But as a community, to decide the policy for the whole school, they need to understand what we're providing and whether they think that that's a good policy for the school to move ahead with.
Yeah,
And
and
to
to be
frankly-
honest with them and say, it is the same as when your kid goes to the library.
Well, and to be honest,
It's the same as when your kid is in Starbucks. It's the same as when your kid's in Dunkin' Donuts. It's the same as when
Yeah, I
your
know.
kids are...
that doesn't offer me a lot of security as a parent, because I think we with our kids or with school, we have a level of security that is much greater than Dunkin' Donuts or anything else.
Right.
Matt, you can go to the website and you can read it, and I doubt that this website is producing stuff that's inaccurate, and if it is, we shouldn't be buying equipment from them. They claim on their website that with VSK, you can authenticate and authorize. You can individually set parameters for each person and
With
identify
VLANs.
them on your network.
With VLANs in your environment, which we don't have.
All right.
Okay.
My point is, in all of the conversations we had, this was never brought up. We were talking about MAC addresses,
Right.
which was a very seemingly difficult thing, according to you, but we never discussed this. And this is
Discuss what?
discussed the
Encryption?
PS key.
No, we didn't talk about
Right.
encryption, but we
And when
can
I talked to,
definitely-
the representative, he
Yeah.
asked me, well, why wouldn't you have this? Why would you run it in an open network? And I can tell you, I've also found out some things that I won't share at this meeting about why you shouldn't run an open network, whether it's BYOD or it's your house, because they are very vulnerable to intruders.
Oh, I
And
know.
simple
We've seen this a
encryption.
lot.
Simple,
I know.
please let me finish. Simple encryption, like a PS key, is not at the level of a bank or something like that, but at a level of a school, going from nothing to being able to identify people, what their role on the network is, and so forth, should certainly have been considered before we opened up BYOD.
I was asked a question, several emails, I answered it 3 different ways, so let me try to answer it again. The question was, can we identify users on the network? And the answer to that is still yes. It was yes a month ago. It was yes a few weeks ago, and the answer is still yes today.
And it was no before that, Matt.
It-
Let's be fair.
It was?
You want to go back to the meeting?
Hey,
If user,
if
You
you
wanna
don't
watch-
mind, we're getting into a he said, she said, and absolutely.
last month, what it is, 2 months, I answered 240 emails. And what's happened is the question like changes just a smidgen every time.
Right.
He's done answering. Okay? He's done. He's now done answering. We're not going to get into a debate of let's beat up men. There's a question, there's an answer. We met on the 22nd, and I heard about, or 31st, whatever, and I heard it probably a dozen times. The purpose of this meeting is so I will better understand functionality. Never a meeting about why this and why that and why the other thing. Why didn't we do it? We're stupid. Okay? That's the answer. We're stupid. And we're trying to take advantage of improvements of the equipment we have to accomplish what we were asked to do. Authenticate. And that's what we're doing. So the questions that are really debates in disguise are over. They will not be answered.
Madam Chair, may I speak? I would just like to inform everybody in that meeting, Matt and the superintendent likened our network to Dunkin' Donuts and said,
Okay, that's
they,
done.
no,
No.
No,
We're-
this
you're not-
happened.
I've already said you're not continuing. It was a
excuse me, Madam Chair,
non-public.
you just let Phil run on about how he's not going to answer questions and accuse me of beating up Matt.
You
If
are.
Matt- If Matt was forthcoming
have
with
been.
answers, what have I said to Matt? Yes, what have I asked Matt that was personal in nature, Madam Chair?
You asked questions 6 and 7 different times, a different way.
Yes, and you know what I just discovered this week? That all along,
I take
we've had
offense-
that capability.
You know what I take
All
offense
along.
with? We're a policy-setting board, and you went and called a manufacturer
Good thing I
to
did.
check up on that.
Good thing I did, Madam Chair, because it's been there all along.
He just explained to you why it's not, isn't effective, and I'm not gonna.
I'm not interrupting. For the record, we do not agree that that statement is accurate.
You do not agree that you like...
You're not getting into a debate with the superintendent.
Dunkin' Donuts.
We're not getting into
I
a
will
debate.
post
No,
the
no, no,
video
no, no,
tonight.
no,
It
no,
was
no,
Dunkin'
no.
Donuts.
No. Can I?
It was
Yes,
Dunkin'
can I?
Donuts.
Because
Ask Todd, he was sitting right there.
I'm gonna.
We're not
ask
getting
Todd,
into a
he'll-
Let's
debate.
get into it.
He'll say
What's
that.
wrong with the
getting
debate?
into
I will say
What's
this.
wrong?
I don't.
I just said we are not getting into a debate.
That's very convenient.
I,
Thank you.
Are you accusing me of something?
Yes, I'm accusing you of not letting me get my questions answered when I'm asking in a respectful manner
You're
about
not being
security
respectful.
issues. Oh, so you're personally accusing me of not being respectful?
I don't find you to be respectful to them.
Doesn't take an accusation.
Phil, I object to the way that you're acting as our administrator. And I was going to walk out of here, but you know what? I'm smarter than that, and I'm not going to.
And,
Yeah, let's move on, Madam Chair, because I don't want to listen to Phil talk about this either.
but
Let's go.
you don't have.
No! Gavel him.
I
Gavel him.
I thought I had the floor.
You do.
I had the floor and I got gaveled. Please gavel him.
I'm not down with the superintendent.
Thought it was Phil.
He's not a member of the school board.
Say that you're liking into Dunkin' Donuts.
You did, Phil.
And
But
did-
I can't talk about that, but you can. I object, Madam Chair.
Objections so noted.
So you're going to let him talk about Dunkin' Donuts, and you're not going to let me talk about it?
No, neither of you are talking about
We
Dunkin'
just talked
Donuts.
about
I
it.
didn't even have Dunkin'
He
Donuts.
didn't bring up Dunkin' Donuts. We're not discussing Dunkin' Donuts.
Maybe we need to get some microphones so that we can hear what's going on.